Hi, my name's Neal Brennan. You may recognize this voice is from the new Samsung ad.
The Samsung
Galaxy Tab Pro.
The Samsung.
Nope. You got to get the gravel, bro. You got to go down, and you got to the Sam's.
When I
LeBron,
heard
wow,
that was good. But when I heard that Neal Brennan, the guy who has the vocal doppelganger, closest to the vocal doppelganger, got the Samsung contract, it was so painful to see your success.
But
your
if I die,
success.
They know about
That's
you.
in the clause?
Yeah.
That's in the contract? Cool.
No, it's actually that they don't go to you. That was my only deal point.
I'm X'd out.
Whatever you do. Get a Samsung. I don't even have to say that. I got no dates other than Sunday show, Santa Monica, come see me and watch my special somewhere, wherever you can. iTunes, Netflix. Not Netflix. Comedy Central, etc.
And go into a Samsung store and ask.
Go into a Samsung store, ask about me.
Ask about Neal. Hey, it's Moshe Kasher. I'm going to be at the Madison, Wisconsin at the Comedy Club on State, February 27th through March 1st. 6th through the 8th of March, I'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina at the Comedy Zone. April 1st, April Fool's Day. Me, Natasha Leggero, Tom Lennon in New Orleans at One-Eyed Jack's. That should be fun. And then the weekend after that, Laugh Boston in Boston, Massachusetts.
Wyatt, what do you got?
I'm going to be at a Metro PCS store in Brooklyn,
selling me a
working on a screenplay because they got it's a mobile hotspot.
Is that true?
Yeah, free Wi-Fi in the Metro
great.
PCS.
That is fucking fantastic. All right, well, if you don't got, he's being bashful. He has an album coming out.
I have an album coming out in April.
April 17th. What's the name
April
of it?
19th.
April 19th.
Yeah, I think it's live in Brooklyn.
Yep, that's it.
Yep.
Here we go.
Now you're fucking with the champs.
Yeah, back.
We are
again,
back.
guys. Get a Samsung.
It's just, you got to stop.
Still,
I'm not getting any money.
Galaxy Note 3 with S Pen.
They were good spots, man.
They were good
but
spots.
Don't bring that shit to the champs.
I'm not going to bring that.
getting
I'm not going to
paid
sell you that
by Mr.
unless,
Samsung.
Yeah, unless they step up.
Yeah, and sponsor this
Yeah.
podcast.
Our
guest today. It's
Yes.
the Champs Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. You're tuned in.
Yeah,
of course
yeah,
you
yeah.
are. You know that.
Yeah, you know
Come
that.
on, don't cut me off. Let me do my thing.
Because you get radio-y up top.
I know that's the structure that we do.
I know, but I don't think people are dying for radio.
This
I
is
think
the way
they come here to get away from radio.
This is the way that it works. We start the thing and you go, yeah, and
Yep,
then we talk
that's
about
true.
dates. You always go first.
Yeah.
Then you play some music. I never know what music you're going to play
Right,
until
you never
I
know.
actually download the podcast
Right.
because you've never allowed me any creative input. That maybe is a little bit untrue. And then I start radio-y just so people know where they're at, and then we have a great conversation. You're tuned into the Champs Podcast.
Basically, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You'll say it's their favorite podcast.
It's the Drive Time
Yeah.
404.
It's with all the wax.
Our guest today.
Our guest today is an old friend.
Funny man.
From never in L.A.
Never in L.A.? We're lucky to have you.
Used to live here. We'll get into that.
You know him from The Daily Show. You might know him from his Comedy Central special. He's got a new album coming out. It's exciting stuff.
Live from Brooklyn. It's on vinyl, guys. Got to get a record player. This thing's going to cost you upwards of $200 if you don't have a
200 to
can get-
2,000.
Yeah, well, yeah, you could get the one at Urban Outfitters. It's like the
You can get the cheap one, but
Yeah.
I feel like if you're going to get a record player, you also want the tube amps and
Yeah.
you want a serious.
You're going for like a very specific audience.
Yeah, I'm going.
I.e. no audience.
I'm going artisanal. I'm
Yeah.
going Brooklyn artisanal with it.
This is
why I
a
did it in
craft.
Brooklyn.
This is a craft album.
That
Yeah.
deep, beautiful voice you're hearing is Wyatt Cenac, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Say hello.
Yeah, hi, Wyatt's here.
Hello.
All right,
That
so
wasn't a command. That was sort of a conceptual say hello audience.
Oh,
I didn't want to command you to say hello. I'm sorry.
I mean, it felt
It's
a
fine.
little rude.
It already
but-
happened.
It's my bad. I apologize.
where do we begin with you? We can get into what we were talking about earlier later on.
Well, I can tell you my first experience with you.
All right.
Because I always think it's a great showbiz story. We were doing a Montreal callback at the Laugh Factory. We're at the Laugh Factory offices here today. First of all, it was such a nightmare on so many levels. I remember we were about half. I don't know if you were in the second half or the first. But I remember what happened to you. But about the halfway point, the manager comes back to all of us who are doing Montreal callbacks, big moment in our lives, and says, Joe Coy has to go on, and he's got to do 40 minutes, so we're cutting everybody's sets to 3 minutes. And it was just like, it was so mind-boggling. Do you remember this?
Yeah. Well, and not just that. At some point, I think they even said, we're going to drop you down to like 1 minute.
Just so that Joe Coy, who's
but did-
a resident here,
Yeah,
but shows every single night.
Well, what's crazy is Joe Coy ended up leaving Jamie for management, and then Jamie was so mad at him that he was mad at Joe Coy, and so he wouldn't use D'Elia at the Laugh Factory. And I had to recommend. I was like, "You should use D'Elia. He's really good." And Jamie's like, "I don't know, buddy. I don't know." And then finally, now D'Elia's on every show doing. Now he bumps people for 40 minutes.
Just the idea that he needed to do 40.
Yeah.
It's important. He couldn't do 30.
No.
So that we could actually have the biggest moment in our career up until that point.
Joe Coy wouldn't let me go on to practice for a Fallon set 2 nights before I had to do Fallon. He wouldn't let me go on at the improv, and I don't. I would say I don't hold many grudges. I think we all know I do. That is on my list of don't.
But
He's
that
on
one
my
was-
don't bother list.
That one was a weird one because it didn't even seem like he needed to go on.
I'm sure he did.
Even at all.
Yeah,
I
one-
never blamed him, actually. I always blamed the management. But
Yeah.
maybe now
I
should.
blame him. Yeah, I absolutely blame him.
He was a surprise drop in. So the place was already packed out, and people they either knew they were coming for a showcase or they knew
Yeah.
they were coming for it was whatever, like a Friday or Saturday night, and
Right.
they knew they were coming for a show, and the place was packed out.
Then Wyatt takes the stage. He's doing fine. Everything's going fine. Oh, the funny part was she goes, "You got to cut you down to 2 minutes." And then everybody, it was a very empowering moment
Yeah.
for me because I was still in the timid, afraid of bookers stage at that point. Everybody looked at each other and just went, you remember?
Yeah, fuck that.
Fuck that. It
Yeah.
was like the first time I
Yeah.
had ever thought, like,
Yeah.
fuck a booker. I'm doing what I want.
It
Did
was
you guys
yeah.
say that out loud?
Yeah, we were just like, absolutely, we're all ignoring
Well, it's
that.
weird that
Yeah.
they would like the guy from Montreal. If it was Robbie, would be like, "That's fine. Everyone can do 2 minutes." It's
I
like,
doubt he even knew.
No, I don't even think the bookers were there. They were recording everything.
Got it.
So there was a camera that was recording everything. But yeah, I remember that moment where the showroom manager walked away and we were all kind of like, are we going to listen to that? Like, this is
Right.
Yeah.
our big moment to
Yeah.
do something. This is our, like, a big showcase. And everyone was kind of like, yeah, I'm not going to do that if you're not going to do that. And it was this united front. Like,
completely.
That's
Everybody
great.
just felt empowered to defy.
and
the
you guys
rule.
all did 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
That's
just
right,
to
man.
thumb
Yeah,
your
say,
nose.
fuck you. But the listeners have to understand, like, when you're a younger comic, like, the idea of even one comedy club, like, defying them is like
It's like a quarter of your
Yeah.
diet.
Yeah, it's a foreign concept. You just think,
well, I never did the Laugh Factory. I could never get up at the Laugh Factory. So for me, there was also a part of it where I was thinking, oh, if I have a good set,
Totally.
I could come here because I was mainly just at the Improv, and I'd occasionally go to the store, but I never went to the Laugh Factory, and so it was, oh, okay, this is cool. This is my first time at the Laugh Factory. If I impress them, maybe
Right.
even if I don't get Montreal, maybe I could come back here, and then for them to say, oh yeah, if you don't do 3 minutes, we're going to be very upset with you.
it was so crazy. So then Wyatt takes the stage. He's doing great. And then somebody just starts heckling you, right? I mean, just starts yelling for no reason.
Yeah, but it was the most bizarre thing. A guy is in the balcony and leans over and just yells out, "If I kick your ass, I'll make you famous."
Yeah, I remember that. That's right.
And
apropos of nothing.
yeah, there was nothing that
It
led
wasn't
to that.
Floyd Mayweather or something. It wasn't like somebody.
Well, maybe it was. I'm just saying why it wasn't up there going like,
yeah,
look
like
at these
it wasn't. You
douches.
weren't doing violent comedy.
No,
It was just doing
or
a set.
begging to be famous.
Yeah. I don't know what to do to be famous. That you
Yeah.
weren't doing that bit.
I wish somebody had a suggestion. I am
Yeah.
taking brainstorming.
Yeah.
Well, I have an idea. So, yeah, right. And I remember very clearly you just go, do you realize this is like one of the biggest moments in my career that you're ruining right now? And I don't think
Did he? He doesn't sound like a very empathetic guy.
No, but then I wound up talking through his logic because I was like, well, wait, though, what if he does kick my ass and
Yeah.
that makes me famous? And I started just kind of talking the whole thing through of like, oh, yeah, maybe some cameras pick it up and I lose my teeth, but I'll be like the funny guy with no teeth that everybody wants, old gummy. And I wound up talking this through, and I remember people in the crowd were digging it, and my whole set just got derailed, and the second half of my set was just dealing with that, and then just kind of talking. I think somebody else up front even said something. I think they may have even said something earlier before that guy said something.
But you want to know, I have a secret that I've never told you. You know who that guy was? It was Joe Coy.
Why?
It was Joe Coy shadowboxing up top getting ready.
Why?
So then I don't think either of us went to Montreal that year.
No, but I
Joe
remember
Coy did though.
Joe Coy probably did,
and
actually.
he triumphed.
He did a show called 40 Minutes in
40
Counting.
minutes.
Well, I remember somebody came up to me afterwards, and they said, because I was bummed out, and they were, I think, trying to make me feel better, and they were saying, no, you know what? What's actually kind of good about that is they're gonna see you in the moment, and they see how in the moment.
I don't think that's wrong. You know what I mean? Like if you're funny, it's like it's not the best, but it's the second best thing that could happen if you get thrown some shit and then you can rebound.
But needless to say, Montreal didn't think that.
Yeah, but
Well,
you know
yeah.
what? But then my point of all of that is the next thing I heard about you. I mean, I know you, but the next bump that I heard was that you were on the Daily Show, and it's another one of these moments in show business where you go, oh, I thought that was the thing. It turns out that thing that I thought was everything. Also, I didn't go to Montreal that year. It was nothing. It just was some dumb experience, some dumb moment in a person's life that
Yeah. Oh no, it is. It's. I feel like there are all those weird showcases, especially living out here. You would, here's a showcase to do, or here's CBS would have the diversity showcase, and they tell you how important it was and how they would bring all these agents and managers and producers from all these CBS shows, and none of those people fucking show up. And but you go in thinking, oh, this will be my thing, and I did it, and it didn't do anything. But then I got the Daily Show, and then they would put out press releases that said, "Oh,
as seen."
Yeah, he did the diversity showcase, and Nassim Pedrad had done it the year before me, and I knew Nassim, and Nassim got SNL around the same time I got the Daily Show, and so I remember somebody from the diversity showcase contacted me, someone who was applying to get in it, and they were like, was this really helpful? Because, I mean, you got Daily Show, and I was like, it wasn't. I didn't get the Daily Show because that CBS Diversity Showcase. Don't be fooled.
Nothing's really helpful directly other than just, like, cumulative effect. I do find, like...
Or white hot luck.
Yeah, or like I did when I did Montreal 2 years ago. It was the first time people were like, oh. Like, it was a bit of, like, a coming out. But it's like, did I come out at age 38 after doing a bunch of other shit in comedy? But they're like, oh, you're a good comedian. So there is, but that wasn't like planned. It was also like a shitty midnight show in Montreal. People were like, oh, all right. But yeah, I don't think that there is like you do this and then this is going to happen. It's all accidental.
I was so desperate when I was a young comic that I went out for one of those diversity showcases based on some very spurious, my parents are deaf. And I thought like, well, I mean, that'll kind of, there's something there. And the woman,
it's a minor thing. There's a lot
the woman literally pulled me aside and she's just like, hey, I think you're funny. What? You do not belong here. Why are you doing this? I was just like, oh, yeah, fair. Okay.
You know, Dov Davidoff used to do, there was when he lived in New York, a comedy club in New York did a Puerto Rican night, and he would go on it as Dov Dominguez.
Come on.
I swear to God. he would change his name to Duff Dominguez. And because he has a Puerto Rican energy to him.
Totally.
And it was like, all right. And they bought it. He needed the stage time, so he changed his name. He took on a whole different act for Duff Dominguez. A lot of Spanish punchlines. Kidding. All right. So, Wyatt, where are you from?
I was born in New York, but I grew up in Texas.
Okay. You're born in New York. When did you move to Texas?
I was probably about 5, I think 81 or something.
And your dad is black, your mom is white, correct?
No, my mom is black. My dad is black from Grenada.
Boom, in your face,
wow.
Neal.
Yeah.
That
black from Grenada
Neal.
meaning islandy or
West Indian.
West Indian, got it.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
I've never been to Grenada. I've been to Trinidad. My stepfather is from Trinidad, so I went to Trinidad, I think, when I was 13 for a funeral.
And your parents split up when you were a kid, and you moved with your mom to Texas, right?
Yeah. Parents split up when I was about a year old, and then my mother remarried.
And this is maybe one of the most interesting father stories we've ever had on the Champs. Tell people what happened to your father, what happened. Tell them where your father is today.
My father is dead. My father was murdered. He was a New York City cab driver, and he took a fare up to Harlem, and they shot him. And it was 2 guys. They shot him. I think the car lost control, flipped across Lenox, and
Did they get out of the car, or did the guys?
They were out of the car, and then I guess as they were sort of trying to rob him,
he pulled away.
It sounds like something like that happened. It's all really weird. I just got to see the police file of it, and everything. The witness statements are all kind of like, yeah, we heard gunshots, and then we see a car sort of go across the median and flip over, and nobody. I don't think anybody really saw from start to finish.
It was late at night?
It was like 11:30.
And how old were you?
That was 1980, so I was about 4.
So you didn't even have any real context. Like you were too young to even really.
I was too young to know exactly what happened. I remember as a kid going to clean out his apartment, and I have like a memory of that, and not totally understanding what it was, and thinking he would come back. And so I left something behind, thinking like, oh, he'll come get it, and like he'll want this. It's our thing. And so I left like a toy behind. So I didn't totally understand it. So
that's the direct Kubler-Ross stages of grief right there. Is denial. It's just straight denial. Like, no, he's coming back. He's gonna come and get this toy. That's also about as sad an image as I can imagine.
Yeah, you could not write a scene with a sadder image than a young Wyatt. I imagine that you were very cute.
I was adorable. I still had a full beard.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Full beard,
did I say
full
adorable?
fro.
I meant terrifying. I was a terrifying baby.
I was a little wolf baby.
Yeah, that's great.
And when did it dawn? Like, was your mom remarried by that point? Were you guys?
She was already remarried, and so she'd remarried probably maybe like a year or 2 after they split up. So she remarried quick, and then at some point, me and my mother and my stepfather, I guess we'd moved to Texas, and so we must have moved to Texas in 80, and then that was 81. So I think that was the timeline or something like that.
And were you close with them before you left?
My dad?
Yeah.
My dad and my maternal grandmother stayed close even after my parents split up. And when I was little, I would always come to New York, like we're in New York. I would go to New York, and I would stay with my grandmother, and then my dad would come by, and we'd all hang out, and my dad's brother he and my grandmother and we'd go to the park and like eat food and hang out and stuff, or go to Coney Island and all those things. So we were close, like as close as I think
right.
a toddler and an adult man can be. Not like Michael Jackson.
Right, because that's closer.
Yeah, I guess that is.
That
yeah,
is very
okay.
close.
So we were close-ish.
And what about your stepfather? Did you ever like resent him? I mean, what was the deal with?
Yeah, it wasn't. It honestly, it was a weird relationship because after my father died, my mother and stepfather, we were in Texas, and at some point, a few years after he died, they changed my last name to my stepdad's last name, and they never like. My mother would never talk about my dad, and if I brought it up, she would get really angry. And
she did that weird thing. Any picture of you together, she would just put a black bar across his eyes. It's like, Dad, Mom, you don't have to do that.
Yeah,
it's not like we don't know who he is. He signed the waiver.
Who's that? Who's that guy in the Woody Allen family that's dedicated his entire life to photoshopping Woody Allen out of all family photos?
Yeah,
really?
It's like an ongoing project.
Oh my gosh!
It's not. It's like a serious under.
Yeah, I don't. It's not Ronan. It's
no.
like,
It's one of them that's in software, and he's just like taking it upon himself.
and he started doing the movies as well. He did
That's
Annie
right.
Hall, and he totally took Woody Allen out.
It's interesting because Annie Hall becomes just about a schizophrenic woman. It's a very different movie.
Yeah,
I kind of want to see that version.
yeah.
That's right.
She's riding. Oh no, she's just driving. She's driving under the bridge, crazy, and you just know when he's reacting at all. It's just a weird driving scene.
That's a hell of a thing to be committed to.
I mean,
It's worth it.
Yeah.
He's committed. Okay, so what did you? So they changed it to Cenac, and then you were like,
No, Cenac is actually that's
went back.
Yeah,
Cenac went back.
Yeah, well, and I had to do it. I had to wait till I graduated college. They had told me if I had said when I was graduating high school, because I always wanted to change it back out of respect for my dad, and like I'm junior, he's senior. Like it's as close as it gets to. Oh yeah, no,
as close as a toddler and adult man can get,
exactly
name wise.
But when I was in high school, I remember as I was graduating, I'd said, "Look, I appreciate all this stuff. I want to change my name back to honor my dad." And they said, "Okay, you could do that, but you're gonna have to pay for college yourself."
Shut up.
And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, then I guess I will keep
this. This name sounds good.
That's
Actually.
fucking weird. Does that not strike you as hostile or weird?
Oh no, it was hostile. There was a lot of hostility.
Was that? Where do you think that came from? Your stepdad or your mom?
I feel like it was probably a little of both.
Did they have new kids after you?
No,
Fresher kids.
Yeah.
When I was 13, my stepfather's nephew, who I'd grown up with, he moved in with us, and so he became like my little brother.
Got it.
But my mother and stepfather never had any kids of their own. So, but he would. I mean, if we were out in public and people were like, "Oh, your son looks like you," he would never be like.
Truth be told,
actually, I'm a hero. This is not my my kid. I just decided to take on a kid.
That
just
is
for fun.
interesting. It is like a Batman definition of heroism, where it's like, I'm taking you on, but also, motherfucker, if you think you're changing your name, I'm not giving you money.
Yeah,
it's like it's mixed.
It is weird.
Is he still alive, stepdad?
Yep.
Have you ever, as an adult, been like, "Yeah, why did you do that"?
Nah, because I haven't talked to him in maybe like 8 or 9 years.
Let's get into it.
Ring the bell.
Hold on. Ring a ding a ding a ding a ding a ding. We're like Mark Maron, except we're not subtle about it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, trauma? Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah. We haven't talked. I haven't talked to my mother and my father really in a while. Probably 8 or 9 years, maybe longer. So,
what's your feeling about that, Neal and Wyatt? I'm curious. Like this idea of like divorcing from, there's this idea like if I'm not getting what I'm fed emotionally and spiritually, the idea that I must continue relationships because of a biological link. That's a new idea to say I reject that, and I'm going to go where I'm getting fed emotionally.
Yeah. I think you and I are similar in that regard. I think you and I have similar takes on it, and I think we have similar anger issues with that manifests itself in other ways?
Yeah, I feel like you need to do the healthiest things for you. And if you're in a relationship that's not a healthy relationship, we say that if you're in an unhealthy romantic relationship, get out of the relationship.
Yeah.
If you have a shitty friend, stop hanging out with a shitty friend. It feels like the same applies to family, to sort of burden yourself with other people's shit if it's making you miserable
or unhappy.
Doesn't feel right. And I grew up in a way that my mother, if my mother was upset with me, she would let you know. And it was such a big deal that my stepfather would come to me and say, "Look, you're right, but just give your mother her way on this. Like, just do what she says." And it was always, I used to hear that so much of just like, no, you're right on this. You are correct, but just let her have this. And it was like, at some point it felt like, no, like why treat an adult like a child and let them go their whole life being spoiled, thinking everything I do is right and everything I do is good. And if everything you're doing is treating people like shit, then why would you do that? And so for me, at some point it was like, oh no, it's not healthy. Gotta go. It
is interesting where people get derailed mentally and emotionally. Like I look around at my friends, not that either of you have kids, but like just the people I know, and I go, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't be a logicless like monster. Not that your mom was a monster, but you know what I mean? Like, and then I go, but somebody I know must be. If everybody I know has parents like that, half the people, some one of us would do that to their children.
Have you ever had the experience when you are with your friend who has a kid and you see him interact with their kid and you go, oh, you're going to be one of those parents. That's fucking weird. Or like that wouldn't have been my suggestion. I'm not excited about this.
Well, what I see openly is the parent that's going to destroy their child by treating them like a god. I always say in New York City, the rich people treat their dogs like children and their children like gods. I've seen that demonstratively, but I've never seen like you little monster.
That's all a matter of where you go.
Right.
It's also like a poverty level thing as well.
No, I mean I hear what you're saying.
I mean having said that, as I hear myself say it, there's plenty of like rich people that are like, you will fucking get in that car, Steven. As much as there's like people yelling at their kids in the street.
Poor Steven.
As much as fucking Stevie, fucking drop that grape juice and come here right now.
Thank you.
I will kill you.
Thank you for finishing that bit because I didn't feel like doing a Puerto Rican. I don't want to pick that brush up. I had to do either Puerto Rican or black, and I don't.
Dub Dominguez, you get in that car right now.
Dub got treated like he grew up crazy. That's a whole nother.
I didn't even need you to tell me that.
Yeah.
That emanates.
Yeah. Okay. What that's interesting about the parent thing is like what I found as an adult is, and you experienced as a kid, parents don't take notes well.
Oh yeah, totally.
They don't. They think that I actually one of the last emails I wrote to my mom was, as much as you espoused us all being responsible people, you take no responsibility for our family. You take no responsibility for your only job. I've said to my mom a number of times, if I was as bad at my job as you were at yours, I would be homeless. And she wouldn't respond.
My thing growing up, my mom would, the only way we could resolve my mom was so logicless in her bullheadedness that no matter what she was saying, the whole family could be like, this, like you're basically like your stepdad. The only way we could resolve it is if a therapist agreed with us. If a therapist agreed with us, my mother would instantly say, okay, you guys are right, and go that direction, which became even more infuriating. It seems like it would be good because you had a solution,
right?
But it became more infuriating because you'd be like, I'm the person who loves you and is in your family.
Yeah.
You don't listen to me at all. And then this stranger, this stranger will
You
say
had, and you dealt with a lot of therapists within the family, right?
unbelievable amounts.
And did you ever go like, Mom, I've won 14 cases in a row?
You couldn't have been talking a less relatable language to my mom. It never would have registered.
You mean
like,
spoken English? She was deaf.
Well, I feel like I feel like it is a weird thing for parents to recognize their children are more than their children, that they are humans and they are human beings who should be treated with a respect as you would treat anyone else. And especially as you get older, but I think even early on, it is very easy for them to just, oh no, you're that same little baby. Like I always feel like whenever I see someone in a movie or hear someone say, like an older parent say, like, you're the same little 3-year-old Tony that I always, and it's like, that sounds like the most disrespectful, patronizing shit you could say to a person. That's
and like, sad for the kid. Like, wow, man, you haven't evolved at all. You're still,
like
you have a 3-year-old's mentality.
Mentally, you are a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So my mom always brings that shit up.
Yeah. So wait, so when you saw me get married, are you now picturing 3-year-old me fucking my wife? Is that what you're?
Well, you did have a beard.
Yeah. That's true.
Technically. My mom always brings up like, oh, we used to hang out so tough. We would hang out all day. We'd hang out, and it was like, I didn't speak English. Like, I was like, we didn't have, that wasn't the greatest relationship of my life. Like, I don't remember it, and it wasn't like equal.
But even as you guys are saying this, like, I'm like reacting from some sort of,
familial
guilt thing.
Yeah.
Like I hear what you guys are saying. It makes logical sense, and I'm still wanting to like take you to task and go, but that's your mother. Like, where, like, at some point, like, I kind of agree intellectually, and then I still have this.
Well, I feel conflicted about it. I always feel conflicted about it.
That's always the conflict that is always there, is that, oh no, I still have love and appreciation for both these people, but there's shit, they did some shitty things and will not take responsibility for them, but it is, oh no, you only have, these parents, that's all you have. And there are moments in my life where I've thought, oh yeah, I wish I could talk to my mother about this, and then I'm like, well, not my mother, but a mother,
the mother.
I couldn't agree more.
And I felt that way at an early age, because I kind of got to a place early where I was like, I don't really I remember that when I was working at King of the Hill, and
he wrote for King of the Hill.
I wrote for King of the Hill for a few years, and we had gone every year. The show would take a trip to Austin to kind of see Texas, since the show was based there. And the first year I got to go to Austin, I invited my mother and stepfather down. I was really proud, because this was the first time I was making money. And so even our relationship at that point we didn't talk a lot, but I've thought, no, I want them to come down. I'm going to buy them a meal. And, it's like kind of the turnaround, the thank you or whatever. Because as a kid, I was always like, I want $1 million. I'm going to write them a check for $1 million, and I never want to deal with them anymore. And that was when I was little. That
buyout. You were going to do the buyout.
Yeah, I was going to.
You don't know is that your mom would whisper that in your ear when you were asleep. You're like, Rich, give me $1 million. I'll leave you alone forever. You can have your name back.
Man. That's all I need.
But writing for King of the Hill, it didn't give me $1 million. So I was like, maybe I'll just buy him a dinner. And so I invited him down to Austin, and we had a fine time. But we had dinner, and at some point my mother started going on about how she wanted to be my manager. And I was like, what are you talking about? And my stepfather, to his credit, stepped in and was like, well, there are people who do this. And she was like, no, Brandy's mom is Brandy's manager.
Great. It's a good point. It's a good point.
It's a great point, yeah. But at first I thought she was joking, and then I realized she was serious, and she got really mad that
you wouldn't sign with her.
Yeah, that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go.
You know who signed with her? Joe Coy.
Hey, go where you're getting fed, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah. That's where, and that got him on. She gets him on Chelsea at least once a week. That's your mom's got a real in at Chelsea. Was she had legit beef about it?
Yeah, because I think both my stepfather and I thought she was joking, and then at some point it became clear she shut down and she did the angry
that
thing.
Typical of her? Was that almost predictable behavior? Does that like line up with the way she was most of her life?
Yeah, because it was she's not getting her way.
But even like meddling or overstepping or no boundaries.
I used to have to carry around a cell phone. She bought a cell phone for herself when like cell phones were those big things in leather shoeboxes, and she would make me carry it everywhere, and I would have to carry this thing, and she would have people. I remember there was one day I had gone to Six Flags with this girl I was seeing, and she told me, don't drive to Six Flags. And I was like, okay, I won't. And then I went to go pick the girl up, and she lived kind of across town in Dallas, and so I went to go get her. And then she was like, you know what would be romantic is if we just drove, and we drove to Six Flags, and my sister, because we were supposed to go with her sister and her sister's boyfriend, and so I was like, we could just drive separately, and we could stop and get food. And I was like, I don't know, my mom. And then she kind of touched me on my leg, and I was like, oh, okay.
Fuck my mom.
Yeah. And then
correction.
So I drove, and I guess my mom didn't want me driving on the freeway because I had to take the freeway to get to Six Flags. But drive, get there, it's fine, go to Six Flags, have a great day. I am driving back, and I'm getting all these calls from my mom, and she's like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm on my way back. And then
this girl's touching my leg right now, Mom. Yeah. Everything's good.
Well, I get back, and she's calling frantically, and she's like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm getting close. I'm close. So I get home, drop the girl off. I get home. I walk into the kitchen, and everything from my room, like all the stuff that was in my desk drawers, has been emptied out onto the kitchen table. And she's like, get in my room. And she's sitting in her room on the bed with anything I had that was precious to me, I would keep in a briefcase that had a combination lock. She had jimmied that open, had all this stuff out on the bed.
Your dildos, your bongs,
your
guns.
Bong, bong dildos.
Oh, yeah, the classic.
Yeah. But all these like papers and stuff that like drawings of like, because I would draw, and so like all my drawings and just like little, anything like report card.
By the way, you've now got the first and second place horrifying images in Champ's history.
Oh yeah, no. So far so good. Yeah.
This is actually more chilling. This is hitting me harder than the dad thing.
Yeah. Really?
Little boy leaving the toy.
Yeah.
We got that. Then we cut.
That's
quickly.
so hacky that I can't even.
Right.
But this is like, fuck.
You weren't as developed a comedian back then. You didn't know how hacky a move that was.
To leave a toy at your dead father's apartment. Thing that he would come back.
You're a very sophisticated comedian.
Yeah.
Now,
Now you know. Now you don't do
at
that.
17, I kind of
now you just do it with a look.
But yeah, she had all this stuff. So come to find out, she had sent someone to go see that my car was where I had said I'd left it. When it was not there, she called the cops, reported the car stolen to teach me a lesson. Then I guess felt guilt for that, called the cops, said the car was fine. And then had been tracking me kind of the whole way, and then used that as an excuse to just go through my things. And I remember at that moment, she looked at me and she was just like, your car was supposed to be where you said it was, and it wasn't. And I was like, how'd you know? And she was like, I sent someone to go see it. And she was like, you're nothing
one
but
of my goons.
Yeah, it kind of was. And she was like, you're nothing but a con man. And I remember thinking,
the briefcase doesn't help your case, by the way.
No,
just the fact that you have all your goods in a briefcase.
Yeah.
But that was, I kind of, when I was a kid, I was
and it
like,
had the yellow glow from Pulp Fiction.
When I was a kid, I kind of wanted to be a con man or a spy, and that was actually kind of cool to me. And because what was crazy, the weirdest part of it was the most damning thing in there she never even noticed.
Which was?
I had
identification papers from Germany in 1932 that you'd moved to the States and started a new life with?
close.
Wow.
I the summer before had a report card, and I had gotten, I think, 2 C's, and so B's were barely allowed by my stepfather. C's, and I had this report card, and so it had come to the house early. It was summertime. I saw it. I knew the C's were going to be there, so I steamed it open, and I then my stepfather had this laptop, and I, with a word processor, just replicated the report card because they would print it out on school letterhead, and so I replicated the report card, then took it, went to school, and the counselors at school had met my mother, and they'd met my family, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we know," and they just gave me letterhead. Like, one of the counselors was like, "I know what you're doing, and it's fine," and he gave me school letterhead.
Was it Michael Landon from Highway to Heaven?
I know it was
Scott Bakula, and then he leaped away.
It was this counselor. His name was Mr. Oglesby, and I hope I don't get him fired for that. But
That is crazy.
He gave me school letterhead. I remember when he met my mother, he came to me afterwards, and he was like, "I understand, and if you ever need anything."
Here's my question: what about your mother was so clear to people that she? What would you call her? Unstable? Would you call her odd, strange, particular?
I don't know.
Particular. I think I'd go particular.
I like particular. I think because she was so controlling, at least maybe outwardly to other people, maybe that's what it was that anyone who knew me saw me, and if she was describing me, her depiction of me was so different from the me that other people could see.
What was her depiction of you?
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't really know. I don't know what she said to this counselor for him to come up to me and just say, like, if you need anything, and basically just say, like, no, there's something weird there. If I had to guess, I feel like that counselor and other people saw that, like, oh no, he's a smart kid. He knows right from wrong. He's mature for his age. I think what my mother saw was
a little con man.
Kind of, yeah. And that, like, danger is always around the corner, and we have to surround him. Like, that following me was not the last time she had somebody follow me. And there were times I had friends who would say to me, "Your mother asked me to report on you." And so there was this treating me like a convict, and I think that perhaps that's what people saw. And maybe that's what Mr. Oglesby saw, that he was like, "Oh yeah, no, this is like, she's not treating you with the respect of an individual. She's treating you like a toy, or like some sort of animal that she thinks is like, oh no, he sits when I say sit, and he does this." And it was.
They made you change your last name to the dog, right? So your name was Wyatt the dog.
Wyatt the dog, right?
Yeah.
The movie My Life as a Dog is about you.
It's about, yeah. That's
Wyatt the dog. I like it. It's horrifying, but I like it.
Yeah, this got dark. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. That's what I always find interesting about you is that you have. I don't think they're transparent. I just know you from the couple times we've hung out and talked. You have a dark spirit. I don't know if it's a dark spirit, but you and I have the same thing, which is interfamilial conflict that manifests itself in I think anger in odd situations, potentially misplaced.
Yeah, and I don't know. At least for me, sorry, I'm peeing right now. If you
I
can
doubt
get
it's
that.
getting picked up.
Moshe's
It might be getting
okay.
picked up.
If you hear something in the background, Moshe's making coffee.
No.
Cup of coffee?
No, thank
Come
you.
on.
I like that you're offering
that.
that. You're trying to drag us down into this.
It's a normal thing to make a cup of coffee in the middle of a
Moshe, this
podcast.
is just
I
you.
like one.
That's just you.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
I feel like on stage it's funny because I think there is.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Finishing up his diarrhea.
No, I apologize. You guys were right. I was wrong. And isn't that just what you would have wanted to hear from your mother?
Yeah.
You were right. I was wrong.
It's true.
I made a mistake.
No, the darkness. I feel like I have a darker sense of humor sometimes on stage than people are expecting.
Yeah.
And which will infuriate me with audience members because it's like, no, this is fine. I've in the album that's coming out in April, I talk about my dad's murder, and I remember when I started talking about it on stage, and people every now and again I remember like there was one time where this one guy was like, "Oh man, that's so," and I was like, shut the fuck up. It's my life. I'm talking about it.
He was like admonishing you for talking about stuff like that on stage?
And it was just like, fuck off. And it's that thing of, no, I can, let me say what I want to say. And it's fine. If I'm talking about it and have found a way to make it amusing. That
happened to me one time. I did one of those UCB improv story things.
Oh, like
someone yells out. Yeah, like Ass Cat. And the stories I told, the suggestions just led me very germanely to
the dark
places, and to the point where like
Nazism.
The audience was mad at me and the improvisers were mad at me. I was like, I didn't fucking suggest that.
That's what I always think. You ever do that show Set List?
I did it once, yeah.
It's funny, like sometimes they'll give you a topic and it's just like your brain is literally Set List. It's a show for the listeners where they give you the topic you're supposed to talk about as you're on stage talking about it.
They don't give you the topic. They give you like the title of the joke, and then the game is that you figure out a way to make that thing funny.
Right. So it'll say something like, Jesus abortion or whatever thing, and then you're doing it, and then when the crowd gets weird, it's like, this is literally not my fault. This is my brain just subconsciously work. It's the slide man's fault.
We don't like how you're getting out of the straitjacket.
Exactly.
Right. When I did it, one of the ones they gave me was George Zimmerman apologist.
Right, and then
and it was just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? And whatever I'm gonna do, I need a minute. I need a minute to sit with that because my first, and I think the whole time I did that show, I was just like, no, I'm not doing this show again. Yeah. You've just taken two weird words and put them next to each other.
Yeah. That sound a lot. Yeah, that sound like they could flow. But yeah, so I find that in my case, I find that I have weird work relationships sometimes, and I find that I slowly but surely I'm getting better with it over time.
Right.
But it's not
because
easy.
Of your mother.
It's because of my family and the way I think that you're supposed to deal with it. I literally didn't know that you shouldn't treat everyone you work with like they're standing in your light. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like when your dad's
believe me,
fixing a car.
Neal, I know what you mean.
Oh, you know exactly where I'm coming from.
I do know what Neal
as
means.
someone who works with me. Like I didn't know that that's not a great tone for people.
Right.
I literally thought like, well, I'm the fucking director, so I'm in charge, and and then I'm just like, no. Like in the last year, I've just been like, no, that's not great.
Yeah,
you don't got to do that. Like that's just one example of
it's such a trip to try to deprogram yourself.
Yeah,
from your own entire mountain of human experiences. It's like almost an impossible task.
But it's not even a mountain. It's this 18-month period when you're a kid, and it's like so much shit gets set there.
Yeah,
it's like a typesetter. And then you're just trying to undo this fucking typesetting.
I think the most disturbing thing you've ever said on the Champs is that you're a child for 18 months. I mean, that scares me.
Well, or whatever. It's 2.5 to 4 or something.
After 18 months, you grow a beard.
You grow a beard.
That's right.
You change your name.
You get out there.
So I find that so whenever we talk about work stuff, I'm like, yeah, this sounds familiar. This sounds familiar to conflict with people that maybe you shouldn't have conflict with. That's not going to serve you long term. You're like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
I totally get it. But it's. I also find that's why the reason I asked you about your mom is because I'm starting to realize when people act a certain way, in the last couple months, I've stopped being surprised because it's like, no, that's totally within their character.
Yeah, I mean, people
like
don't...
that's their act. If you're writing them, that's exactly what they would do in that situation.
Right.
But it takes so long to not go like, what the fuck are you? How did you do that? It's like, no, they've been doing that.
Well, your mother is the ultimate example. Like that's a person whose behavior patterns infused into your brain. You know exactly how, and yet my mother consistently shocks me. Even though she's doing exactly what I would have written her to do, I'm still like, how could you be doing this right now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's always a wrinkle you can't think of because you're not in their personality, but there's always like, that's close. I would have gotten them in that direction.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't communicate with them, but I still have an email account that I don't use anymore that they will occasionally write to. And
you check it? Do you get alerts?
I don't get alerts, but every now and again, I think to your point of still wanting that connection, or still like there is that connection there, I will occasionally check that email and clean it out because there's a lot of other people that email me there. That's where you email me, Neal. That's
Neal and your mom.
Yeah, no.
Great. I'll take it.
It's a different, but every now and again, and I will read things where I'm just kind of like, I should know that I should not be surprised by this, but I fucking am.
A therapist said something very interesting. Go ahead.
Well, your mom's email address is wyattmanager@aol.com, correct?
Well, at joecoy.com.
joecoylaughfactory.com.
A therapist said something to me that I think applies to what you're saying, which is it goes back to that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages of grief, that you're constantly doing that in shitty relationships. Even if they're living, you're doing denial, you're doing bargaining, and then finally, and then you depression, sadness, and then eventually acceptance.
Well, love is more hypnotizing than death, because death, at least on some level, that the bargaining won't work, the denial won't. You do know that there's finality there. With love, when a relationship dies, you still have this phantom of that love that still could be.
Yeah.
I keep waiting for a surprise apology party.
Oh, yeah.
When I come home, I'm waiting for everyone to drum up. Like, I got a list of people.
Well, no, that's actually one of the big things that I got out of being in 12-step groups for so long.
Yeah, I got this from 12-step groups.
Yeah, it was this idea that I can't be a victim anymore. I used to say this when I would speak at AA meeting things I'm not a victim anymore. I've been victimized. That's happened. But if I'm a victim, what it means is that I'm waiting for you to come to me and apologize for the things in order for me to get better. Right. I need you to come say, hey, I did this. I'm sorry. And that's the only way I'll get better. And you'll never do that because you're an asshole. And I will sit around.
Asshole's too easy a word.
Yeah.
That was the bit.
Oh, was that the bit?
Big
That's
laugh.
where you would get a huge laugh.
And tell us your dates again.
I'll be doing the Alano Club.
Laugh Boston?
Yeah. So emotional trauma. Boston, listen.
It's like you can't. They're just in their own shit.
Right. They won't come and do it. And even if they will, it won't. So when that said, if I'm not a victim, I have power to change all of these dynamics. Whether it's deciding to move on in a relationship or deciding to accept people for the way that they are and just be there.
Or say closing an email account.
Yeah, and it's funny because every now and again I'm like, I should just fucking close this thing. And I think a week ago I was like, okay, I'm fucking closing this because
that's hilarious.
I was like, I got an email from my stepfather, and it was the first time I'd responded to him in.
Was he white or black?
He was black. He's from Trinidad. He's West Indian as well.
All right, cool.
My mom married.
Well,
two
that
West
also
Indians.
goes to, that you don't see a lot of black dudes having anything but glowing reviews for their mom.
I
you know what I mean? Which
I know,
is another way you're an outsider.
Oh yeah, no.
I see you as an outsider, like racial. It's like you're not like you don't buy into a lot of black shit. There are ones that you do buy into, but then there's plenty that you don't buy into.
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt like outsider is probably a good word. That like, I've always felt on the sort of fringes of things, and on some level appreciated it because it's allowed me to watch stuff and see things and observe. But kids I grew up with, and just, their relationships with their mothers, and, I'd see like other black kids talk about their mothers, and I never felt that. And that's shitty. And I'm sure, like somebody in my family may listen to this podcast and they're going to be like,
you should have heard that, but yeah.
Yeah. But I never had that feeling. I never had that closeness with her in that way. We didn't trust each other. It was a relationship that was built on her not trusting me, and then I in turn didn't trust her.
What do you think she would do if she heard this? How do you think she would process these stories? Like, how do you think these stories ring to her ear?
I don't know.
I know how they ring to your mom's ear with ringing. Anyhow.
Neal,
that was a shot at Moshe.
Unnecessary. I mean, just
that was a shot. I should have prefaced
ad
that with
hominem
Moshe.
attack on my poor deaf mother.
Just persistent ringing for years.
I just have to say, the reason if you saw me smiling, is because what you're saying is very sad, but I had this image of you pressing deactivate this email account, and like a error message popping up of your stepfather, who I assume is named Barrington, and it's recording, and he goes, "Are you sure you want to deactivate this account? It just can't be done. So I'm sorry."
I had an East Indian doorman in New York named Barrington, and he was like kind of weird and kind of a weird hater.
Yeah,
and at one time he goes, "I'm funny too, B." It's like, all right, man.
You're a doorman, B.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, man. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know how she would react. I have a sense of how she would react, in that when I said I wanted to stop communicating in our relationship, we had a conversation on the phone. I was like, it's not healthy for me. I need to stop talking to you. I'm not happy. Every time we talk, I feel miserable. This is really not a good relationship. And it was hard, but she was like fine, and she was definitely upset, and she got off the phone, and she was emotional the whole time, but she got off the phone. She might have called back, and I kind of had to reiterate. And so I remember that feeling of a sort of sense of relief that I did this thing that I had thought about doing for years. And maybe a month or two later, I was doing a show that I got asked to do it at the Comedy Central stage out here. And so it was kind of a big deal, showcase type of situation. So I do the show. Show goes fine. I'm happy about it. I'm sitting backstage, kind of decompressing, and my mother walks backstage.
Who lives in Texas?
My mother flew from Texas.
Whoa.
Walked backstage with a big smile on her face, as though
it was normal. Yeah,
this was a normal thing. And I felt totally violated in that moment. I just started yelling at her. I was just like, "What are you doing here? Get out of here." And she's trying to kind of tamp down my emotion of just like, "No, Wyatt, like, don't yell right now." Like, and it's just like, and it was like, "No, you were not invited to this. Leave." And we just kind of shouted at each other for a little while, and then she left, and that was the last time we saw each other in person. And that was probably, I don't know, 05, 06.
That's you've now got
3.
Number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Yeah, and number 3.
Boom!
Yeah, definitely.
Nailed
No
it.
cinematic images. You've overtaken MC Search's story about Bushwick Bill.
Oh man, Search right now you just gave Search the gas face. That's how.
You know what's the worst part about that shit is, in my experience, is when you don't feel that stuff for your family or from your family, you feel like a sociopath.
Oh, yeah.
You feel like a sociopath because you're like, what is wrong with me that I'm not feeling this elemental thing? I had a thing, I don't know if I've ever talked about it on the podcast. I had a thing with my dad, didn't talk to him basically most of my adult life, emailed him at one point. He didn't respond for a year, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then he called me and was like, "Hey, that email address you sent it to, I never check." He is a phantom one, like a con man, like you does, Wyatt. And he
con man address.
And he goes, "I never." So we ended up talking, and I basically said like, "Hey, I don't think that you loved us at all." And he said, "You're right. I didn't."
Shit.
Now, that strikes most people as incredibly sad.
No.
To me,
Sounds awesome.
it's gratifying.
Yeah.
In that you just go, "Oh, great, I'm not a sociopath. I can feel love. You just weren't sending any my way."
Yeah. Well, and that's the weird part is when I shut the relationship down, I had cousins and aunts who would call me and say, "Your mother is so unhappy. Why don't you talk to her?" And I had a cousin who was like, there was a little while when I got mad at my dad and I didn't talk to him and I regret it. And it was like, I'm not you. And I know that it was really painful in that way to have everyone else basically say like, whatever pain you're feeling is not that bad. Like whatever you're thinking is wrong. This person is miserable, so let's all again go and
fix it for
her.
Yeah.
Do you feel like Neal feels in like that there was a lack of lovingness? Is that because what I'm trying to synthesize from my own experience? Because I don't have this kind of relationship with my mother. My relationship with my mother was completely toxic and a mess, but it was in the exact opposite direction. It was like love to the degree that it was abusive. You know, it was like. I couldn't tell you the amount of times my mother said I love you.
She would hug you until you passed out. Correct?
Kind of a thing.
My mother would do that too. She was very much like, I love you so much. The moment she was mad, she wouldn't say she loved me and she would stop talking to me for a week.
Right.
But everything else was, I love you, and it was mushy. But again, it was, it was it was that thing of. Yeah, I love you if you act this way.
That's the thing about
I love my glass menagerie.
Yeah, I would always tell, and I went to see therapists at various points, and I would say, it feels like I'm a thing in a curio cabinet, and that's what it feels like. And and if I'm not that thing, I have no value, and it always felt like that. Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of talk. It doesn't even sound like a mental health issue. It sounds like a familial system issue. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, your mom's not bipolar. She's not, it's just like, that's just, okay, you're giving me a look. Maybe she is bipolar.
I don't know. My stepfather once said she was.
Got it.
But he said it's a way of defending. I dated a girl in college who was really emotional to the point where like her emotions would turn on a dime, and then one day I found her hiding in my closet in my dorm room, and not in like a sexy way. Like
impossible.
We had like gotten, she just like flipped a switch and got really mad and started screaming at me, and I didn't know what to do, so I left the room. And then I heard like my door slam, and I heard the door of the suite slam, and so I was like, oh good, she left, like she'll cool out and we could talk about this. And I went back into the room, and I'm like, something feels weird in here. And I had 2 closets in the room, in the dorm room, and I opened one, and I'm like, okay, she's not there. And I check under the bed, and I'm like, she can't be in this other closet because that's where my dirty clothes hamper is. And I open it, and she's sitting there in the dirty clothes hamper.
The hamper.
In the hamper.
She got some of your drawers over her head, just sniffing.
Well, she was kind of laughing, and she was like, when I was a little kid, I used to hide in my parents' hamper, and I caught them having sex. And then I had to trick her into going to student psych, where they were like, yeah, we think she has disassociation. And I had to like extricate myself from that situation. But I was like, I need to talk to somebody. I was like, who do I talk to? And I called my stepfather, and I was like, this thing is going on. And he was like, Wyatt, she's just playing a game with you. Just tell her to stop, and she'll stop. And I was like, no, I went to student psych. They think she has dissociation. They think she might be, the guy across the hall is a psych tech, and he said he thinks she might be bipolar. And he was like, Wyatt, all girls are bipolar.
Oh, this is number 4 right now.
This is already number 4.
This is chilling.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
stepfather just like, stepdad, she's got a knife. She's literally pushing it into my flesh.
All women have
women
knives,
do
man.
this at times. You know?
No, and he was like, all girls are bipolar. Your mom's bipolar. And I was just like, I don't know if you're saying that to say it or if that's what you really think, but there's enough going on that happened in my childhood and in my household that, okay, yeah, I could see where one could make a case.
Yeah.
And also this troubles me that if you think that, but you're also still telling us, like, do what she says.
Yeah.
What is your dating life like in regard to all this?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I've been reading a lot about modeling, not fashion modeling,
But that too,
modeling,
right?
Well, I always keep a modeling book around the house about basically psychological modeling, that you get modeled based on what's around you, and so it goes back to the typesetting thing of like undoing that. And it's taken me a lot of work to even get anywhere near health. I don't think I'm there yet, but I'm trying to.
Do you ever have that experience when you're dating someone and you go, like, oh my God, I'm like a fucking cliche. Like, this is my mother.
I'm so psychologically hacky. It goes back to that thing of like,
Oh, yeah.
I
This is
couldn't
my mom.
possibly be doing that thing where I'm so on the nose on this.
right.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I am totally on the nose.
Well, that's why it's on the nose, because
Right,
it's
yeah.
literally the fundamentals of human behavior.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I think all relationships, and it goes back to patterns. I think, yeah, in relationships with women, there are definitely a fair number of high anxiety-inducing stress. Like, okay, yeah, this person is doing something kind of nutty, like hiding in my closet. And even when I dated that girl, there were things that happened long before hiding in the closet that I was just like, okay, this is crazy, but I'm going to keep at it.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had my fair share of relationships in my adult life that, okay, this situation is a little weird, and I've said to myself, I know it's bad. I know it's triggering whatever that feeling, that high anxiety feeling I had with my family is.
But I like it.
But that's the blanket. That's the quilt. That's
yeah,
that's the
nothing
childhood.
feels more comfortable than that discomfort.
Yeah, and so it has been this challenge to try to, okay, I need to stop doing that, and I need to try to create something better. And I feel like I've been trying to do that, but I still have those pitfalls. And then I think on the other side of it too, it's like work stuff, or I think in my with bosses, if I have whether it's a boss or a manager or somebody like that, I always look for paternal figures. And so I'm always, even in comedy, it was always like, oh,
you're my new daddy.
Yeah, I want my comedy
You don't know
daddy.
it, but you're my new daddy.
Yeah, and it was that thing of like, oh no, this is my new comedy dad, and that's the word. No comedian should be.
And then they don't,
dad.
and they don't know it, and then you end up getting mad at them for not doing their duties as your comedy dad. Meanwhile, they never fucking agreed to it.
Right, yeah.
And then you just end up resenting them because, you were supposed to pick me up
Yeah.
at that open mic, and you never came.
Mine is Lavelle Crawford.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I have with my mom is it goes back to the acceptance thing. There's a thing in the 12-step program, which is you don't go to the hardware store to buy oranges. It's like you're going to your mom is a hardware store and you're going there to buy oranges. And my thing is yeah, but she has a sign in the window that says I sell oranges. and then I get mad because she's not doing that. It's like, yeah, it's like, well, if she stops, she's never gonna.
No.
She thinks she sells oranges.
Yeah.
And then I go, hey, are there any oranges? She goes, yeah, I'll be right back, and then just never comes back. She goes in the back, and then oranges never
Hands you a
come.
bag of nuts and bolts.
Yeah, and I got
Your
scurvy.
oranges.
I got scurvy, yo.
Yeah.
That's my way of
I
saying.
need oranges.
I got scurvy, yo. Moshe, any other psychological?
Well, this has been a deep.
This is
Yeah.
actually what Questlove says about the champs, which is black guys get to talk psychologically in a venue that they don't in other media. That Ta-Nehisi Coates, the writer, who I got in a flame war with online, that Wyatt ended up brokering a bit of a peace deal.
Oh, you were involved in that?
I tried.
He gave me his email. But the thing was, it was basically we just learned I learned that there's no arguing with a pundit, because it's like trying to talk a comedian out of a bit.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, this gets laughs.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, but it's not true. I don't know what to tell you. It gets laughs. I'm gonna keep doing this bit.
Well, and it's also everyone, and I think that's even with family stuff, is the realization that everyone has their truth. And yeah, this is my truth, and as it affected me, I'm sure, and I know for a fact that,
Your mom is coming on next week. So
yeah, good. I can't wait to
counterpoint.
hear that one.
Well, we only do people who are in the entertainment industry, and your mother
is a
technically does
manager.
count. She does count. She's a powerful manager.
Yeah, no, it is just accepting that, okay, that's who they are.
Yeah.
And no amount of... When I was emailing back and forth with Ta-Nehisi about... He basically shit on me for whatever. Google it. But when we were emailing back and forth, I made a number of good points, and he would never acknowledge them. Just because he couldn't.
Yeah.
It's
And then at a certain point, I go, okay, why am I trying to... I can't... This guy literally isn't going to acknowledge any of this, so why am I bothering?
Well, and it was funny because I think on both sides, I talked to... I was the in between on it, and so I talked to him and said, "Oh, Neal's reaching out to you," and then he kind of wrote back and was like, what's the story with him? And so then, and I didn't know at first what was, I didn't know what was going on. And then I caught up. And so he kind of made points that he was making to you, to me. And then I was kind of going back with well, I think maybe you're seeing his statements as not the statements of a comedian. You're seeing them as you would take anyone's statements.
Right, as a politician. Or I was a race baiting kind of guy. And so you were, it was funny because he was in a tough position. Wyatt was a black dude and a comedian.
Yeah.
So it was as a black dude, Neal's kind of fucked up. I could interpret what Neal's saying as fucked up, but as a comedian, I agree with what he's saying.
Yeah.
Artistically.
And also, and so, yeah, I think I was talking to him on that level, and I think even to something you were saying earlier, Moshe, he would seed things to me that I think he didn't seed to you.
Oh, that's fascinating.
There you go.
And I think vice versa, there are things where I think you and I talked, where we kind of talked about just the idea of someone who is a writer who is paid for their opinion, and
they get paid per outrage.
And it is true that a person at that level of writing, which is
this guy again, I've talked about the guy on the podcast.
Oh no, Ta-Nehisi's great. And
he's a great writer.
Yeah, but it's he's a very contemporary kind of writer. It's a very now sort of those people that are the young hotshot sort of internet era journalists. They really can't be I fucked up I made a mistake. It is similar to being a comedian. You can't really show weakness in that way because of the style of writing is so bombastic and
right.
Yeah.
The only way you can show weakness is with a 4,000 word mea culpa. That's actually not a mea culpa. Will you tell the story of that listserv that you were on with all those people?
Oh yeah. I got part of the reason. So I met Ta-Nehisi. We met via email because I had read his book, A Beautiful Struggle, which is an amazing book, and to me it was a memoir of his youth that kind of spoke to mine, where I was like, oh no, I relate to a lot of this as just being a black kid growing up, going to high school, and sort of just all the things you struggle with. And I wrote to him to say I really enjoyed the book, and then he and I kind of went back and forth on email, and then he invited me to join this listserv that was kind of it was just a lot of like black thinkers.
Man, Neal and I want on that listserv so bad.
I never listened to this story. I actually don't. When I heard it.
And so
you know who doesn't want us on it? Everyone on the list.
Absolutely. I'm just saying this whole podcast
interest.
has been an experiment to try to get on that listserv that we didn't even know existed when we started.
Yeah, we just did this. We knew there was something out there for us.
But I remember I'd read things, and I'd kind of every now and again I would jump in and
it's just a long running argument / conversation.
And it would be and people would bring up different topics.
And Ta-Nehisi and
Is everybody young?
Yeah, they're all they were writers, they were professors, they were bloggers, and
But like Felicia Rashad's not on there.
no, she's got a different blog.
Okay, she's got a whole different list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so there were all these people on it, and sometimes we get on topics, they would vary, and so anybody could sort of throw something out. And I remember getting into it. There was something we were talking about, and I guess it was drugs, and I had said whatever my opinion was, and this guy came back at me in this really patronizing way, and just kind of saying things to me as though he were talking to a 5-year-old. And I wrote back and I was like, look, you don't patronize me. Like, everything you're saying is the stuff I said. Like, you didn't even read what I said. Don't patronize me. And then he kind of came back with more fire. And at that point, I hit a point of outrage, and it's the difference between I'm not part of the internet world in that way. I hit a point of outrage where we went back and forth to a level where I felt like, okay, now we have to fight. Like, I don't know. You don't talk shit to people back and forth and talk shit and patronize somebody 3 times in a row in email and just think you can get away with being snarky and shitty. Like, and I was, at the time, I was like, okay, do I book a train to DC to go kick the shit out of this dude? And the woman I was seeing at the time who knew him was like, that's just like, no, he's just an asshole. He's a fucking shitty guy he's internet tough, and he fucking talks shit on the internet. And
he's a big writer. You told me his name. You don't have to say it, but he's a well-known writer.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there are these internet pundit like motherfuckers. Somebody needs to write, yo, by the way, it's like that scene in Good Will Hunting. You know, when he does all this smart, blah, 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 and then he goes, by the way, we could just step outside. I'll pop you in the fucking mouth. Like, somebody needs to say, there are physical threats. I'm a man still. I'm over here. I'm out here trying to function.
But it's also this level of the level of sort of just whatever that thing is. It's whether it's anger or rage you're putting into your writing. You're doing it in a way, and it's not just pundits. It's like you see it over the internet all the time where people are just like, they just get internet tough and they talk a big game, and it's like, no, at some point you talk a big game and you expect the other person to back down or buck up. And
there is, but that doesn't exist in the internet.
Yeah.
There is no back down or buck up.
Well, there's back down where it's like, all right, fine, fuck you or whatever. Or like, but there is no buck up. Like, I see it, I always get weirded out when I see it on Twitter where somebody who has a ton of followers, like somebody starts trolling them, and then they send their horde of followers to go just send shit, just overflow this person's Twitter feed. And it's just like, no, like this is all these, like, we're just throwing virtual rocks at each other.
Yeah.
And if you were to run into this person in the street, would you really be that? Would you really take it there? Or would you just kind of be like, hey man, what's going on? Like, I remember I actually talked about this on the first time I ever did Maron's podcast. It was just this little story where I saw Sean Hannity and Keith Olbermann at a Yankee game, and
together.
not together. But they were sitting in the same section. They both had really nice seats, and they saw each other, and they started pulling out their camera phones and taking pictures at each other, like, "Ha, look how funny this is. There's Hannity at the game." And it's like, you guys have talked so much shit about each other.
Yeah.
And been so like, just like, that guy is wrong, that this moment right here
you should be fighting.
You should be fighting. And the fact that
if
you're
you were
not,
really about your shit, you would be fighting.
and the fact that you're not tells me that everything you stand for is bullshit.
Is fucking grandstand. It's wrestling. I learned that at the correspondence dinner, where you're like, wait, Rupert Murdoch and Sean Penn are 3 feet from each other.
Yeah.
In the same room to line up to meet Obama. And it's like, no. This one of you's faking.
Wait,
yeah.
Can I just be the devil's advocate? And maybe the bitch-made devil's advocate. But isn't there a thing that says in evolved people, like that instinct, which I relate to be like, I'll just pop you in the mouth. How about that? How about we settle it like that? Is a sort of, a more animalistic one. And then if you are an intellectual or whatever, then everything can be solved.
Me and Wyatt would like to get to where you are.
No, I'm not saying I'm not there.
We didn't have the parenting.
I'm not there. I bet I've been in a physical fight more recently than either of you. But, Woody, when's the last time you were in a fight?
Oh, I haven't gotten in a physical fight in my adult life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean...
But I'm not saying...
But I'm an animal. You're an animal. When you fight, you feel like, oh, I'm an animal.
But I'm not even saying it has to go to fisticuffs. I'm saying if Sean Hannity and Keith Olbermann are in the same room, the fact that neither one of them would go up to each other, or the fact that Sean Penn, and not that you should go up to somebody and just be like, "Hey, I don't like what you do."
Yeah.
But it feels like if
they both were fine with it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And I guess and maybe it goes back to the family thing, that it's like, why would I be in a room with somebody who makes me miserable?
Yeah.
One of us should leave the room. And that's what I did with that listserv was, no, this makes me miserable. I'm out.
Right.
And because I don't want to feel like I need to fight some dude who's being patronizing on the internet. But it also seems like if you have this belief system of yours and you truly stand for it, and there's somebody else who also they stand for the opposite, it feels like I don't want y'all to fight, but it feels like at the very least, I would hope that you all would say, "Hey, you know what? I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. Maybe without the cameras, you want to sit down and chop it up and just talk, and maybe I can be a more empathetic person and try to see your side of it." And, maybe that, to me, that's the thing that, I'm not saying fight, but it also feels like talk, figure it out.
Even as you're saying that, there is a part of my brain that's going, honestly, there is something good. It would be something good if Keith Olbermann or whatever walked over to Sean Hannity and just popped him in. I mean, there's something real about that that's actually human. And I don't just mean like on a hell yeah World Star level. I'm like,
I would love
it
World
works
Star.
on that level.
I would love for World Star to have that fight.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him, that dude?
See,
in the streets?
No, I've never.
You never caught him in the streets?
No, he lives in D.C. and
what would you do if he was here right now?
If he was here right now, I would say, "Hey, man, that thing you did was really disrespectful, and you are the reason that I dropped out of that thing." And he might be like, "Cool, I didn't want you in that thing anyway." And it's like, "All right, okay, well then, I guess that's where we stand. I hope we don't see each other again."
Right.
But it wouldn't. Yeah, it's not. It's always, to me, it always feels like I would rather resolve it. Like there's some lady who got pissed at me on Twitter and just spent like an hour just writing just vile shit. And there was a part of me that thought about just reaching out to be like, "Look, I had to throw her out of a show." And I was like, "This is why I threw you out of the show. You were drunk and you were disrespectful from the moment you walked in. And then you said some anti-Semitic stuff. And
I'm on your team now, Wyatt."
And then when people told you to be quiet, you misconstrued what they said because you were drunk, because you had been disrespectful from the jump, and you stood up and tried to take your earrings off. And at that point, you could have come to me and said something, but you didn't. You decided to take it to this next level. And I was like, and I really wanted to like reach out to her and say that. And I was like, And at some point I kind of recognized, and other people said it, they were like, don't engage her because she has a truth she believes in. And her truth was that somebody said something disrespectful to her.
Right.
She got up and decided to take it there. And then I threw her out of a show, and it was my fault. And so, and it was like, yeah, I'm not going to.
Yeah, it's never that thing about Oberman slapping Sean Hannity. You don't. That it wouldn't be good.
No,
it's like no. It would be satisfying in a primal level, but you'd lose respect. You can't.
Right.
It's like I learned. Like no, you can't yell at people. I've
Yeah,
never fucking been like, yo, I'm so glad I yelled at that person.
Yeah, I know.
It's just
Yeah,
you just fucking lose.
No.
They just
Then
catch you out there.
Then there's a universal truth, which is that this is just some random fool with like 15 Twitter followers. It's just like, well, who even cares?
And that was kind of the end of it, was people saying like, look, you're just going, even if you think going and trying to make peace on this one, it'll help you feel better about it because you don't like the feeling of somebody being angry, because it goes back to this rooted thing of your 18-month-old DNA that you don't like when people are mad at you. You're just going to try to placate somebody, but the way that their truth is and the way that their truth works is you already tried to explain it to them, and they flipped out, and they were still flipping out on you on Twitter as a result of that. And that's, even if you put any other olive branch forward, they're going to construe that as like, oh, he's only doing this because of this. And so at some point it's like, oh yeah, no, it's easier to ignore a fly than to swat at it.
Right.
And that was kind of the thing that I was just like.
You want to know how you really could resolve it with her? You break into her apartment, she's not around. Leave a little toy. You're right.
Fuck, we got.
Goddamn, we got our bits crossed.
I got your fucking peanut butter and your chocolate. All right, that was Wyatt. That was great.
That was great, man.
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Thank you, man. That was awesome.
All right, man. Bye.
Now you're fucking with the champs.